What's going on, folks? Happy Thursday. I am recording this Inside Star Citizen coverage after it went live. I know I usually live stream these. I was at the gym. I missed it. So this will be a short 10-15 minute long video. We're going to watch Inside Star Citizen for the first time for me, maybe for the first time for you, which is 3.23 patch dispatch, giving us all the details on things that are making it into 3.23. We'll talk about what I'm excited for, what I'm not excited for, little bits of extra detail from things that I've experienced in all the different phases of PTU, EPTU for 3.23. And as always, we'll discuss it after the fact. We'll talk in the comments. We'll talk on Discord. So let's hit play and let's see what they have in store for us for 3.23, which I would expect to come out next week. There are rumors it might come this week, but I don't think it's going to happen. It could. I hope it does, but I would guess more likely mid next week for live.
Alpha 323 is just around the corner, and that means it's time for Patch Dispatch 323, where we run down all the new features and content included in what could be Star Citizen's biggest patch yet. So let's just jump right into things.
Let's do it. I love that they put these out. After years of playing Elite Dangerous and dealing with Frontier, the edgier, so much more communicative, and showing us this step-by-step videos I really appreciate it. Character customizer.
And we'll start with life in the first person. And in 323, life begins with a newly expanded and revamped character customizer.
The character customizer is one that it doesn't mean a lot to me, but I know it does to a lot of other people. It's really cool. It gives you more immersion. It's only phase one of the new character customizer, so while you can do, for instance, a big beard, you can't really adjust the length. You can do a certain hairstyle, but you can't shorten it or lengthen it. So I think it's great that they gave us the ability to customize our characters more, but if you want to make it look exactly like you, there's probably a couple more patches to go before it becomes that immersive.
Letting you create more dynamic and representative avatars than ever before. A new beginning that will continue to evolve with additional features and options in subsequent patches. Now let's discuss all the major improvements that directly affect your character, starting with the new Mobi-Glass.
The new Mobi-Glass is fantastic. It's not done. I believe it's the comms panel, and there's another one, I forget which, that haven't been updated yet. But most of the panels, most of the apps on the Mobi-Glass are brought up to the new standard. It looks great. It's easier to navigate. I haven't come across any major bugs. I think people are really going to like it. I think it needs some work. I think it needs to move faster and be a little bit less clunky, but it's still better than what we have in 3.22 in my opinion.
Now, unlike Eobard Thawne, we've finally killed the Flash, as the new Mobi-Glass finally makes its in-universe debut with a revamped layout and new features like the Health and Contract Manager apps to help you stay alive and find work respectively. It also includes the long-awaited and hotly anticipated new Maps app,
yes,
combining the new star map and interior map experiences into one unified interface.
Something I should warn people about. In 3.23, the map is redone and it's great, but it is not perfect. It is buggy at times. It's hard to lock onto things sometimes. There are still some minor issues with zooming in and out being a little bit cumbersome. Don't expect it to be perfect. This is still alpha, okay? PTU is the early test bed, then it moves into the PU, which is still a test bed. The game is not live, it's not 1.0 yet, so manage your expectations. I really like the new map, but things like the search bar sometimes not working, routing still not working, will happen to you, and I just want people to go into the patch understanding that it's not flawless yet, but it's a lot better. It is a lot better than what we have in 322.1. And I think people will still recognize that.
With an entire host of new functionalities designed to help you find your way through landing zones, space stations, and the entire verse as a whole. Oh, and that work also touches the new lens and visor updates with a great new mini-map that appears now in the upper left corner.
Also very handy. Helmet or not, little mini-map in the corner.
Your days of not finding your way around are soon behind you.
Soon behind you, not behind
Unless
you
you're
yet.
a specific person who won't be named. You know who you are. Of course, when you're traveling through the verse, Alpha 323 has a whole new array of improvements to how you'll interact with the world around you, starting with a revamped player interaction system that's...
The new player interaction system is better than what we had. Again, manage expectations. It can be a little finicky to get used to what shows up on that wheel. Sometimes things just don't want to work. You go to loot something with the new interaction system, it just doesn't pop out. So it's better. It's good to see the direction the game is going. It's nice to see that this is what we're going to have and then it's going to be iterated upon. But expect some bugs and lag regardless in this alpha environment from this new interaction menu. As an example, I had no issues interacting with 8 out of 10 ships, but a couple of them, the interaction points to open the doors were too small and I had a really hard time doing it. Getting in and out of beds or bed logging, it's almost flawless on most of them, but on some, like the Corsair, the selection point is farther to the right than you'd expect it to be, and it took me almost 10 minutes to find it. So trial and error, but it is a easier to use and more enjoyable experience either way.
It's more nimble and customizable than ever before. Default item actions that let you keep your customizations exactly how you want them.
That's really handy, and it does work.
A new shopping interface that streamlines the experience so you can get what you want and go.
Also works very well.
And new looting screens to improve your alternate and more violent shopping experience.
The looting experience is good, but needs work. I do a lot of looting. Anybody who's played with me or watched my videos before knows I'm a loot goblin. I love to go to places, kill bad guys, and take their stuff. I find it immensely enjoyable. It works really well some of the time. You can now swap an undersuit without taking off everything off. You can now swap a backpack or a chest piece without taking off the other pieces around it. Very, very cool. Sometimes it just doesn't work. You go to swap something, it just doesn't register. That's, again, to be expected in alpha. But other times it can be a little frustrating. Like, for instance, you have to leave this new loot screen if you want to, say, loot things you're not going to put on. If you want to go to your ship and strip all the stuff off, additional bodies, you have to bring up a different menu as opposed to this menu, which took me some time to figure out on my own. So as opposed to going to loot, I went to storage, and then that allowed me to kind of open up the screen we're all used to seeing. And we don't know when that's going to go away. We know it is going away. We don't know when. So I would recommend that the first time that you try to do any looting, you wait till everything around you is dead. Kill all the pirates first and then loot a little bit, because you might be in a loot screen longer than you think you're going to be. Something of note for this, from what I just said about spending more time with it, the bunker timer before you're trespassing is now 30 minutes, not 15. I don't know how long that's sticking around, but right now in 3.23 EPTU, the timer has been doubled, which gives you more time to loot with the new interaction screen and to learn it. So take your time, make sure you're in a safe space, try it out. It works, it's finicky.
And speaking of which, there's lots of new improvements to the way you bring first-person murder-death-kill to your fellow citizens in the verse, including scope magnification updates, ammo repooling and backpack reloading, ADS tuning, and the new dynamic crosshair on specialized helmets so you can fire straight from the hip in-game.
Couple things there. The new FPS experience is phenomenal. The feedback you receive, the little red reticle, and the sound that you hear there when you hit and kill your target is very, very easy to understand. It's smooth, it's clean, it feels great. Backpack reloading works half the time. Sometimes it just doesn't register that it's there, but when it does work, it's great. Let's say you're carrying a Demico, you've got 5 magazines on your medium armor, and then you also have another 50 magazines in your backpack. It shows you that you have like 3,000 rounds. So it's great. It's slower to reload from your backpack, but it's more of just like an emergency situation if you don't have time to go and reload. Same with repooling. It's slow, you do it when you're not in combat, but combining all your magazines together and then rearming has become much simpler. And firing from the hip. I don't have a full list yet of all of the helmets that are considered combat helmets, but when you have a combat helmet on, the reticle that comes up does make combat a little bit faster and more intuitive. You got an FS9, you got a decent scope on it. Instead of looking down the scope, someone rushes you, you can just fire from the hip and you know exactly where you're going to hit them. Be aware that sometimes that reticle is a little bit broken right now and doesn't line up with the gun. So I was firing from the hip with a Demeco. It worked great. I looked down the scope and the reticle stayed lower. And now I was actually shooting too high because the reticle had kind of broken from the gun. That can happen. Just keep an eye on it. And if you fire from the hip again, it seems to fix it.
And not just from the comfort of your YouTube comments.
Jared, calling out the trolls. I like it. Attaboy.
And your first-person life doesn't end there, because Alpha 323 allows you to take the fight to 0G with the newly revamped EVA mechanics.
I have to say this as emphatically as I can. The new EVA experience is flawless. It is the best part of this entire patch, in my opinion. Leaving your ship, re-entering your ship, entering 0G from a station, landing. If anybody's flown the Corsair and tried to EVA into the back door in the past, you understand that the gravity kicks in halfway down the plank. And so half the time in 3.22, you end up hitting the door of your cargo bay and kind of floundering around, or trying to get out of a fighter and spiraling out of control. In 323, there's none of that. They have nailed EVA. It is a dreamlike experience, and it makes me excited for the kind of missions that might come in the future of you find a derelict asteroid base and you're floating through it, or a derelict station, or when Maelstrom comes in and ships are no longer soft death and you're kind of floating through a ship you've taken out their engines to, whether you're a pirate or you're rescuing somebody or whatever. EVA no longer feels like a barrier to things. It feels phenomenal, and I'm really excited for other people to try it, especially guys in my own group who have complained about EVA for years. I don't know who in their team worked on EVA, but kudos, man, or woman. Like, I mean, you absolutely nailed this. It's so good.
Changing the way you traverse the verse outside your spacecraft and vehicle. And speaking of your spacecraft or vehicles, the Alpha 323 season also includes new ways to house, load, and launch your ships with the new personal persistent hangars coming to ArcCorp, Hurston, Microtech, and Orison in a 323X patch this quarter.
To clarify, for anyone who has not watched these videos before, 323 season 323X is what Jared is saying here. This means it's not coming in 3.23, but it's coming in 3.23 point something. So a point patch. So personal hangars, the loot kiosks, instanced hangars, that kind of thing. None of that is making it into 323. They held it back a little bit. They actually did a whole video on why they held it back a little bit. Basically, it was almost ready, but not quite. Don't expect these to be in 323, but do expect them relatively soon. I would expect them before summer's over, personally. I don't know that. That's my experience with point patches in the past. We'll get them fairly soon. But don't go around on Twitter and Reddit and stuff saying, hey, they said 3.23, 323 branch. So rough idea. I'm making this up. Don't quote me. 323, let's say next week. 323.1, probably Invictus, which is in about 2 weeks. 323.2, 0.3 will probably be sometime shortly after that with bug fixes and then these features. So don't panic that you're not going to see these yet. They're letting them cook a little bit, but they're coming.
Which also includes item banks to grab your stuff, vehicle platforms to raise your ships,
Those look so cool.
and freight elevators to load them before takeoff. Of course, once you take off, you'll find a new way to fly with master modes and a new way to fight with precision targeting and weapon mount and gimbal changes.
Master modes. I will do an entire video when 323 goes live. It's a little buggy right now in PTU, so I'm not bothering yet. Master modes has had a lot of negative press, a lot of people complaining, and I'm not going to say it's perfect. They need to iterate it, work on it. But I've really gotten used to it. Trying to play in live now without master modes feels weird. Switching between nav mode and let's call it combat mode or SCM mode. It is more intuitive than you think. It is less controls than you're expecting. And it does change the way your ship feels in unexpected ways. Some positively and some negatively. The Corsair feels more maneuverable now in master modes. The Redeemer feels less so. The Hornet feels much more maneuverable to me and faster. but the Scorpius does not. So there's been some balancing done, and they've been very clear that that balancing is not done. They applied blanket balancing to classes of ships, heavy fighter, cargo hauler, whatever. Those will then get subcategories as time goes on that will tweak them further and further. And eventually the parts you put in your ships will tweak them even more. So for all the negativity you've heard about master modes being bad, etc., I enjoy it. I'm not saying it's flawless, but I recommend trying it yourself when this goes live very soon, before panicking on forums and that sort of thing. It's grown on me quite a bit, and I think it might grow on you too.
Meaning space combat's got its next evolution in Alpha 323. But what if flying in the PU isn't enough? Or you simply want a safe place to practice the changes?
Arena
well,
Commander.
there's a whole host of new maps and experimental modes in Arena Commander 323 that we covered here in detail just last week.
If I can make a suggestion for people, go into Arena Commander Pirate Swarm and take friends. Ship combat has become immensely more difficult. The NPCs are smarter, more maneuverable, flying in formation. Their shields and armor feel tankier. They're landing more shots. They also now have limited ammo, so you have a bit of an advantage there, or at least that the playing field is balanced there. But people are gonna say get good in the comments here, but in 3.22.1, I can do the entirety of Pirate Swarm solo, except for the Idris at the end, in one Inferno by myself. The whole thing. What is it, 10 waves? 9 waves I can do myself. The 10th one, you kind of need to like die and come back to kill that Idris with just yourself. But it's never been difficult for me. I rarely die. In 3.23 Arena Commander, I have yet to make it past wave 3 solo. Now, granted, Master Modes changes the way you fly, so my flight skill needs to come back up a little bit. You got to get used to the new weapon distributor changes. You have less ammunition on some guns than you're used to. You have less ballistics on some guns than you're used to. But that only accounts for a little bit. That might account for only making it to wave 5 or 6. But the NPCs are just better. They are just smarter and faster, and they react in ways that players might. Expect higher difficulty in the PU and in Arena Commander versus NPCs, and plan your play session accordingly.
Then back in the Persistent Universe and down planet side, you'll find the new distribution centers with a variety of mission and gameplay opportunities for all manner of playstyles, and the added dangers of the American Copian.
Distribution centers are fantastic, but they're not done. 3 main things with them that you should know. 1, only the surface levels are done. So the levels they showed us under that at CitizenCon are not in yet. So the caves at the bottom, the different levels, maybe ship manufacturing, whatever it's for, only expect the top level right now as they kind of work out the bottom ones. My understanding is that those levels are there, but there's nothing on them. You can kind of like peek your head through cracks in the floor and stuff and see there's stuff down there, but it's just not ready for missions and such yet, which I think is fine because the distribution centers are huge and they would cause a lot of lag on the server. There are some clipping issues at the distribution centers. They fixed most of it in the EPTU, but when you're at a distribution center, there is a small chance that as you're navigating through it, that you fall through the floor and just fall through the planet. It's happened to me a few times. They're patching them as they go. I don't understand game development well enough to know why it's happening or why it's not fixed yet, but it may be frustrating if it happens to you. Just, I warned you, it might happen. Maybe just park your ship further away, and that way you can come back and get it without falling through again.
Star Citizen's first fauna being added to Alpha 323. And how are the Merrics dangerous? Just wait until they add poop mechanics.
There are no poop mechanics for birds. But the creatures are cool. It's cool that we're going that direction now, that the game has fauna.
Then there's also exciting new technological improvements like our initial implementation of Vulcan, new DLSS, FSR, TSR upscaling, and the new water rendering and simulation tech that will make Star Citizen look even better than ever before.
The water looks so good when it works.
And then under the hood, with the new replication layer split in 323, players no longer connect directly to the game servers and instead to the hybrid service which hosts the replication layer, which
Two things there. One, Vulkan, upscaling, all that. I am not tech savvy enough to really comment on it. However, I've tried it and it didn't make much of a difference for me yet. Following chatter on Spectrum and comments from CIG staff, it is not fully implemented yet, and most people won't see a big difference, so I'm just leaving it off until it's fleshed out. But it's cool that it's in there. My understanding is it should improve performance as time goes on, and it's one of the first steps towards true optimization of the game, which would open up the game to more people. You wouldn't have to have a beefy PC to play just this one game, which I would appreciate, because I can run any other game in existence on my PC with no issues. And Star Citizen, of course, being not optimized yet can lead to some. The second thing being the water tech there, and the replication layer. Water tech is gorgeous. Nothing more to say about that. I don't understand the technology behind it. The replication layer is massive. I have yet to have a 30K in 3.23 in the PTU. I've had some servers crash and shunt me to a new server, but despite how long that takes, which can take a while sometimes, I have yet to lose a ship or have a full 30K. So we're going a step in the right direction.
which then itself maintains the state of the game. This now means that the loss of a server can be recovered from without the players being disconnected from the game or losing their progress, and sets the stage for multiple game servers sharing a single hybrid replication layer in the server mesh coming online with Alpha 4.0.
And I'll wait for that. I finally believe it might be this
there's
year.
more things in Alpha 323 than you can shake a stick at, but there's actually even more, as this branch not only includes all the hangar and cargo improvements we discussed earlier, it also contains the next iteration of Invictus Launch Week.
Before we get to Invictus Launch Week, final thoughts on 323. It's a good patch, a lot of new stuff, very excited for it. If you haven't tried it in the PTU, I can't wait to see what my crew and fire team and friends all think of it, and anybody else who wants to join our Discord or talk in the comments on YouTube. It's a good patch. It's probably the biggest patch we've had in years. I'm really excited for it. I think it's going to be a bit buggy for the first few weeks, as any alpha patch can be, but I think it's a step in the right direction. On to Invictus Launch Week. I don't know. Let's see what's going on.
Which is actually 2 weeks, because we're all super extra here. And we'll introduce a handful of new ships and vehicles folks have been waiting for, as well as one straight to flyable that's available with 323 launch. So let's learn more from John, Ben, and Alberto.
One new straight to flyable. The Mirai Pulse. Yeah. This disappoints me a little bit. There were rumors only, that we might get a heavier Mirai fighter this year. It was teased as a silhouette at CitizenCon. People have been calling it the Guardian, although that's not confirmed by CIG in any way. I was really looking forward to a fighter with an interior, much like the Vanguard, which I don't particularly like. It sounds to me like we're going to maybe get that as a concept. Maybe we'll get some ships that are from the backlog making it in, which would be very cool. But one new straight to flyable being a hover bike. We'll watch it. I'm sure it's going to excite some people. I'm now a little bit disappointed because I was really hoping for that new fighter. But hey, if it's a concept, cool. I don't really buy concepts, but I'll definitely be excited to see it. And if we get more ships from the backlog making it into Invictus, there's several combat-focused ships that have been concept for quite some time, that if any of those made it in, it would still be an exciting event.
The Mirai Pulse is Mirai's entry into the ground Gravlev bike category.
It's kind of cool looking.
Racing vehicle from Mirai. It kind of builds on some of their kind of core values as a brand of MISC, focusing more on performance. It takes a lot of inspiration, should we say, from the Razor, and really kind of shrinks that kind of thrill of speed down.
So the role of Gravlev vehicles in the game, and especially hover bikes,
I've already tried this in the Arena
you've got a
Commander
mission in
EPTU,
mind.
it's already in there.
Perhaps you don't want to risk bringing your ship or larger vehicle right up to it. It allows you to park some distance away.
That's a good point from John Crew on the purpose of ground vehicles. A lot of people ask me why I keep a Cyclone or why I keep an STV in the back of my ship at all times. That's the reason. Because right now, maybe you want to land far away from a bunker and drive in for a rescue mission. Maybe you want to land a big ship somewhere that there's too many trees or something and drive in. In the future, though, you know, it could be any number of reasons. There could be SAM sites you can't destroy. There could be too thick of trees. There could be, you know, imagine you could leave a marker on your Carrack, like a permanent marker, so you can always find your way back to it, which we know those are coming because they have the first iteration of markers in the map in 323. You could get out in an Ursa and just go exploring across the surface of the planet to find who knows what, and then make your way back to your ship that was too big to just take off land. So hover bikes like this are a cool way to do that. They're fast, they're maneuverable. I might even get one. I'm only disappointed because I was really hoping for a new Mirai ship. But let's see what else he thinks are reasons to use a hover bike.
Out of radar range, out of line of sight, and then infiltrate stealthily, speedily towards the target location.
It's a big gun.
And of course, as features like weather comes online and more diverse and hazardous biomes such as heavily dense forests, graveler vehicles, bikes will become more useful as ways to get closer to your target without damaging ships.
That's exactly what we were saying.
The Pulse is our smallest ground vehicle. It was a intentional design choice to make something as small and compact and as fast as possible. And Mirai
didn't feel that small in
fits
PTU.
that performance ideology.
It needs to be small. It needs to be small, fast, agile, and really that just kind of gives us a much greater opportunity of how the players can really
smaller than a
experience
PTV.
that sense of speed on one of our ground vehicles.
So the Pulse comes in two flavors. We've got the base version, which comes equipped with a custom laser Gatling on the front. And then you have the LX, which is the dedicated racing version. It loses that front weapon, replaces it with a big...
When I tried it in Arena Commander and PTU, I could have sworn it was ballistic, and I was running out of ammo. So a laser Gatling, I think it might be the first laser Gatling we've received in the game. And the base version having the gun is also cool, because other ones in the past, other ground vehicles, it's always a premium version that has weaponry. So the cheapest one, we want to ballpark it, 40, 50 bucks. Having a gun, if it's got a decent amount of fuel, that could be a cool little fit in every ship kind of bike.
Intake, you get extra thrusters, so out of all the Gravlev bikes, it is one of the most agile there. The reason it's so small and compact is we wanted it to have the most compatibility with all of our other vehicles in game, so by being compact allows you to pretty much stuff it into every single other vehicle in existence.
They're putting it in Ursa and it
Size-wise, I think
fits. My
it's
God.
just over 2.5 meters in length, so it is tiny. To put that into some perspective, it's a tiny bit longer than 2 SCU of cargo.
It did
so
not
is
feel that
very
small to me.
I'm sure
That's
there will
amazing.
be one
Okay,
or two
cool.
vehicles out there where it doesn't fit in, maybe such as the MPUV, but across the board, it's designed to get in a lot of other.
He says might not fit in the MPUV as they have them parked in the MPUV. Something for people to note that really made me excited in 323. Bunker turrets no longer fire on hovering ground vehicles. Apparently, that has always been a bug. I believe they will fire on ground vehicles over a certain level of emissions. I haven't tried tanks, for instance, to see if that's changed and they now fire on them. But the Dragonfly and the Nox were not fired upon. So I think it's more based on things they can detect. So I don't feel like it's done yet, but we're moving towards being able to use ground vehicles in more situations. And so I could see parking 4 of these bikes in the back of a cruise ship, like a Corsair or something. Instead of having one vehicle with 4 seats, you could maybe have a Cyclone and 2 motorcycles, which could open up crew possibilities for kind of splitting up on the ground and approaching from different angles at a ground site without being detected.
Vehicles. My favorite thing about the Pulse series is just the way we've integrated all the components together into that incredibly tight chassis.
Okay. I'm more excited for this thing now. This is cool.
The idea of a sports bike, but almost, I think they're called like naked bikes.
It's almost kind of Tron-esque.
Feel still quite aggressive and
or,
quite kind of chunky, almost like a
Kira.
But we kind of really wanted that sleekness that Mirai and the brand as a whole kind of is known for. One of the, I guess, biggest kind of challenges that our like Alberto and the concept team really had to work on, which then turned our production artists and kind of gave them a few things to scratch their head against, is really fitting all of the ship items and the components into a vehicle of this size.
As we never did anything so small, new problems come along. I decided to take the same approach of a motorbike.
Ooh,
We tried
nice
to
concept imagery.
insert most of the components in what will be the fuel tank. And with this approach, we kept the same shape, the same.
This is something important people should notice about Star Citizen, is that nothing is kind of magically there. The bike has to have space for real components for them to work. So small snubs like a Fury don't have a jump drive or a quantum drive because there literally isn't room for one in the frame. They don't just magically code the thing to be able to fly. It has to have room for engines and power. It's very ambitious. It's very cool. It also opens up the gameplay of keeping spare parts with you, that sort of thing. Bike breaks down in the future of the game, let's say 1.0. It's very expensive to claim your bike, or you don't want to lose it, or you have stuff on it that you don't want to give up. You don't simply log out and claim it. You have to go get it. So you got to call your engineer back at the ship, ask him to grab a spare engine or a spare power plant, and then make his way over to you to install it on your vehicle so it can get running again. That's not for everyone. I think that's incredibly immersive, and except for in edge cases where it's, I'm in a hurry or something, I think it's going to be very, very cool.
Main shape of a motorbike. So we have very fluid and soft shapes, palindromal, which means that you can flip it and it looks kind of the same.
There's
and
a
then we
black
added
paint
the
for this.
front
I'm gonna have
part
to get
just
one
to connect the semiotic of the racing vehicles to this one. We were really tight to the size because it can fit in a container, and that created a huge challenge with how the components move when you
It can
actually
fit
have
in
to
a
expose
container.
them. So
That's
that
telling.
dictated actually the shape we ended up with, and I'm really happy with the final result because you couldn't say probably that inside such a small vehicle there are so many components.
Compared to our other Gravlev ground vehicles, the Pulse it trades durability for speed and agility. So compared to say like the Dragonfly and the Hoverquad, which are relatively tanky, not as good there.
The Nox is more tense and definitely bigger. Mirai tries to simplify things a bit. Less is more. We try to have a different approach compared to most of racing vehicles and communicate speed through mass and not through aerodynamics, although we keep aerodynamics in consideration for this kind of stuff.
In terms of the Nox and the X1, it is right up there in speed and agility. So they all trade different speed attributes in terms of straight line speed, cornering speed, rotational velocities.
Oh god, it fits in bunkers.
And the bespoke weapon on the front of the base model is our first laser Gatling in the game. So we're looking forward to see how that performs.
It is the first laser Gatling. Okay, cool.
So that's the Pulse coming online in 3.23, 2 variants of it. Looking forward to seeing all the different scenarios you're going to get it
It's
into.
tiny. It's going to be hard for ships to lock onto if you're running across a planetary surface. Gravlev also means you
Did
can
I
probably
say
move in
it's
space
small?
too. Approaching Korea at higher speed
It's really, really small
could be a use.
and goes really, really fast.
It is fast. I did notice that in the
See the
PTU.
memes
It's a very
coming.
fast little bike.
So what did we learn this
What
week?
did we learn?
Well, hopefully we were reminded of all the great work the combined Star Citizen and Squadron 42 teams have been working on that make their way to the persistent universe in Alpha 323. That like any and every other feature in Star Citizen, the work doesn't stop here and will continue to iterate and evolve in subsequent releases. And that the Mirai Pulse is this teeny tiny hover bike that can fit into all sorts of places and may just be John Griffith's and James Kay's worst nightmares when players try to squeeze them deep down into the distribution centers. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Thanks for letting us share the process of game development with you, and we'll see you all here next week.
Okay. I think they covered most of it, so I will keep this ending short because that video was longer than I planned. 3.23 is right around the corner. If it's not late this week, it'll be next week. I think probably next week. Invictus is coming up really soon. Usually it's the second or third week of May for about 2 weeks. We got a new vehicle coming, the Mirai Pulse. I'm now more excited for it, and we'll see what other concepts or past concepts make it into the event. In 3.23, there's a lot of new features. I'm not going to list them all again. Scroll back. A lot of great stuff, some buggy stuff. All in all, I'm extremely excited for the patch. I'm hoping that It brings a lot of people back to the game who haven't been playing as much lately, as 322 has kind of progressed and had bugs, or maybe they've made too much money from exploits and they just have nothing to do anymore. We don't know yet if there's going to be a wipe. Personally, I kind of hope there is one, but we have no idea. And otherwise, it's just going to come down to public opinion on whether the new features outweigh the bugs or not. So, as always, thank you for watching my recap and listening to my nonsense and my opinions and theories and feelings on things happening in Star Citizen. If you have questions or comments or just want to chat about it, jump in the comments or jump in our Discord. I'll put a link below. And I'll do all the basic streamer stuff, people who follow and like and subscribe and all that. It really means a lot to me. I've been back to streaming and making videos for about 2 months now, and the response has been great. And I really appreciate you guys. That's it. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. I'll be streaming live tomorrow, Friday, on Twitch with our org. Whether that's in 3.22 or 3.23, we will find out soon. See you guys then.